Nearer and nearer to the land they sailed until the water was so shallow they could go no further. They dropped anchor in a peaceful, bowl-shaped harbour rimmed with sparkling white sand. Still not like that. Sparkling white sand.
Carnies?
Yeah. Dense woods rose up all around. Again, still not like that. There were no towns, no houses. There was no sign of any people at all. Now, of course, they're nowhere. The Pilgrims rowed ashore to explore this wild land so full of mystery and promise. The men were armed with guns. They had heard that America was full of fierce animals and savage Indians, otherwise known as sorority boys and girls. After many days of exploring up and down the coast, they found a deep harbour near good farmland. Here they would make their home. They called it Plymouth.
They could have called it anything they wanted.
While some stood guard against Indians, the others began to build houses. The first was long and low and very plain. They called it the common house, for they would all share it. As each day grew a little colder and a little darker, they worked quickly. Winter was coming. They're obviously nae Scottish. Cold and dark, you don't know half. And a terrible winter it was. There were days of bleak and bitter cold, far colder than any they had known back in England. Snow and sleet and high winds battered the common house, and for the little ship anchored in the harbour.
2 years, that's your shit.
You couldn't get Sky for loving her money. The Pilgrims huddled together for warmth, trying to survive on stale food from the long voyage. Many of them became sick and died. The other half were pregnant.
Written by Jeremy.
I'm so much better than Jeremy Kyle. Respect, son. By the time spring came, there were only 50 pilgrims alive. 30 on the way. And they were mostly children. It's like I've read this before. What would they do if Indians attacked? Surely they would be too weak to fight back. Then one day, an Indian did come. The Pilgrims had never seen an Indian this close, and they were terrified. But this Indian had come in peace. His name was Samoset. And look, ladies and gentlemen, an Indian. Which, by the way, we now call indigenous people.
Is he not the guy that all the native folk actually blame?
No, it's not him.
Is that his brother not standing his ground a bit better?
I think actually it's his uncle.
Oh, yeah.
A few days later, more Indians marched to their village, 60 of them, led by a warrior chief. The Pilgrims and the Indians made a treaty, promising not only to do each other no harm, but also to help each other, so syphilis and the common cold. An Indian named Squanto. I'm not kidding, it's his name. Squanto. Yes.
Sounds like he's from Arctic or something.
It turned out an Indian named Squanto turned out to be a special friend. He taught the Pilgrims many things.
Why?
How to find special friend.
Sorry.
Where to find the best fish.
Just due to Lord the Toad.
And how to stamp eels out of the mud at low tide.
Oh.
How to find their way safely through the dark forest. And where to find nuts and berries and wild herbs.
He's kicking himself now. Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
And Squanto taught the Pilgrims how to plant a wonderful new food. It was called corn. Which, by the way, we had tonight because it was called cornbread.
Cornbread is awesome.
In each seed mound, they buried a small fish to help the corn grow. You know, because protein.
Protein!
That was well, lads, we did protein. I got that from Duncan. All that first summer in the New World, the Pilgrims fished and hunted and tended their crops. They built more houses to live in and sheds in which to store their supplies. The children worked and explored and played with their few simple toys, and we judged the Indians, the actual Indians, for child labour. Here it is, the start of America. You know. The Commonwealth Games will go ahead with or without child labour. When autumn came, the Pilgrims rejoiced over their harvest. Bright ears of corn and fat pumpkins, peas and beans and delicious squash and green herbs.
Was there pie?
Hang on.
Calm down.
They felt so happy about their good fortune that they wanted to celebrate. They knew they could never have survived without the Indians, so the Pilgrims invited the Indians to join them in a feast. 90 Indians came. It's kind of like my house being invaded by all y'all. Except you guys are not. For 3 days and 3 nights, don't get any ideas.
Don't say that.
The Pilgrims
We're off Monday.
The Pilgrims and the Indians ate and drank and danced and remembered games and played games together.
And you don't want to dance?
We don't have enough booze to last 4 days. I bet we don't have
There's
enough
enough,
booze to
like,
last
free shop
tonight.
closes at 10 o'clock.
To remember that time, a long ago, a time of brave pilgrims and life-saving Indians, we continue to celebrate the feast. We call it Thanksgiving.
How did it end? What happened?
And then they killed all the engines.
I emigrated back, and it started the division of this side of the coast.
Sorry,
Isn't the sequel that the Americans killed all the Red Indians?
Zip it. in a good way. Can I have one more word? I just want to say Thanksgiving would not have been possible tonight if it really weren't for about 3 people. One of whom is actually Lynn and Michael together. Because I could not, for the love of money, I could not find a turkey. And they had one in their freezer that they donated for tonight. So thank you for that. The second, of course, is the generous Miss Flynn. Who came over yesterday and managed to help me get half the prep done. All the pies, the stuffings, the ham.
She ate all
Yeah, there might have been a lot more.
And of course, the third one was the fact that obviously you've seen the size of Herbert the ham.
It's not
And I had nothing to cook it in, so if it wasn't actually for Rebecca back there, it would have never made it in or out the oven, so thank you to Rebecca for the tray.
Can I just say, my Thanksgiving, the story in my Thanksgiving finishes with the Americans singing Scotland. Does that happen?
But it
David, are you listening to this? The American stays in Scotland.
Can we all say thank you to a 4th person, to Rachel, for having
Thanksgiving is my absolute favourite holiday. It also happens to be my wedding anniversary. Because I love it so much, and I'm so glad I could share it with all of you.
Yeah, but we're not like, yeah.